putting the right person in the right seat where they can play to their strengths and use their energy wisely, it pays off in spades.
Imagine you had the ability to understand someone's personality type before you'd even met them. Well, that's exactly what today's Ask an Expert imagined just a few years ago. Hi, I'm Joshua Carlsen, co-founder of Propelo Media, and today I sit down with Greg Skloot. He's the co-founder of a platform called Crystal Knows. It's an incredibly insightful AI-powered platform that evaluates someone's online presence and then gives you the insights you need to more effectively communicate from what you should and shouldn't say. Now let's hear from Greg directly about how he started his business and how he scaled it up to be working with companies such as Google, 3M, Nike, and Oracle.
Greg, I'd like to welcome you to our Ask an Expert podcast.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me.
Definitely. So I've done a lot of these over the past few months, and your business is certainly one of the more fascinating ones. So I'd like for you to tell the audience what Crystal is all about.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Crystal, we call it the app that tells you anyone's personality.
Okay.
So essentially it uses AI and machine learning to analyze text on a web page, for example, a LinkedIn profile or a resume, and it uses that text to predict someone's personality traits. So behaviors, motivations, communication style. It is remarkably accurate and rather creepy. Because without knowing you, it's kind of like looking into a crystal ball before you meet someone and finding out the best ways to interact with them to have a productive conversation and build a strong relationship. So it is a really cool product. We've had a lot of fun building it.
Yeah, well, and it fascinated me when I started reading about it. I'm curious from a functionality standpoint, am I able to put somebody's name in and it's able to go out and search all media platforms available in the digital world? Or is it specific to like a LinkedIn profile page that I happen to be on already?
So more so the latter. So the main functional use case is a Chrome extension. So you install the little app into your Chrome web browser. It adds a button on the side of a LinkedIn page that says view personality. You click it, it scans that page and pulls up in the sidebar almost like this little how-to manual about this person, all of their personality traits and kind of some specific coaching and guidance on how to communicate with them around a specific purpose, like having a sales conversation, recruiting them, just making a good impression. But yeah, it is all based on publicly available text. We're not going out into the universe and just pulling anything random. It's what's loaded on that page or what you provide.
Okay, so incredibly dynamic, and I want to get into the different kind of customer segments that you have. But first, I guess I'd like to understand, how did this come about?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So we write about this quite a bit in our book. So Drew, my co-founder, and I started another company before this. It was called Attend.com, a software for event planners. And we started that company right out of college, so we really didn't know anything. and we quickly figured out that while we were quasi-decent at making a functional software product, we were really, really incompetent when it came to dealing with people. And so to try to cover this incompetence a little bit, we hired a management coach, someone that kind of came in and just helped us learn how to, we had scaled our team to about 30 people, which was pretty wild. And he kind of just helped us learn a lot more about how to deal with people. And one of the things he would use was DISC, this personality framework. We didn't know anything about it. But basically, he would be able to, without meeting someone, explain how they were going to behave and why they were doing things that they were doing, why they were reacting in a certain way, why they were saying something. It was like he was magic. We were just blown away. How on earth is he doing this? And it was based on this personality framework called DISC, which is it's been around for over 100 years. It's based on this 4-factor personality model, which kind of goes all the way back to like the ancient times, kind of personality frameworks like Myers-Briggs and. So anyway, so it's used very frequently in professional environments, and he used it to help us kind of get through some really tricky business humps in our last company, and it was just remarkable. So as we were thinking about what we wanted to do next, we kind of had this running joke: could we build a robot version of our management coach that could predict someone's personality type through DISC and give the kind of insights he gave us on how
Sure.
to deal with someone that we might not necessarily understand. So that is the long, wacky story of how Crystal came about, creating a robot version of our executive coach.
So what does that process entail? Because obviously, technology is just so fascinating to begin with, but this is just, it's AI, right? So how do you guys take the framework of DISC and the consultancy of this, management coach, and how do you start putting this together? I guess actually the main question I have is, how do you start validating this application that you guys are building?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you take a personality test, which you could also do on Crystals. Anyone can sign up and take a free, DISC personality test. And when you do that, basically the way it works is you rate a set of words for you kind of each question has 4 words, and you say which one of these is most like me and which one of these is least like me.
Sure.
And that's how you take a DISC test. So not surprisingly, when you write or when you describe yourself, you're also choosing words. Now you're doing it a lot less on purpose,
Yep.
so versus choosing one. So each word means a bit less.
Okay.
But when you have a lot of words, it is actually, remarkably telling about your personality. So in the very, very early days, how this worked pre-AI, we literally made a massive list of words and said, okay, if you write goal-oriented, that implies that you are X% more likely to be this certain personality type. And if
Sure.
you talk about team and you use the word people, you are, and I'm greatly simplifying this, but simple words like that, you're Y% more probable to be this personality type.
Okay.
So what the AI does is it looks at thousands and thousands of those words and groups of words and does that little computation I just described. Basically calculates, okay, this person's using goal-oriented.
Right.
That means that they are this tiny minuscule percentage more this personality type. And when it has enough words, it combines all that insight together to predict a personality type based on DISC. So that is essentially what's happening under the hood, super simplified down.
Sure. Well, it's super simplified, but super accurate based upon a lot of reviews that I've read. What type of, I'm interested from a consumer segment from your guys' business, who are the primary consumer segments that you guys work with?
Yeah, so we describe our customers and users as professional communicators.
Okay.
So basically anybody that talks to people for a living, which needless to say is a kind of a massive market and can make it challenging to focus.
Sure.
So I'd say that the biggest segments of people that are using Crystal are in sales, recruiting, coaching and training, and then just general management, executives, anybody that's going out and meeting lots of people. Crystal's like this, we kind of call it the coach. And it's kind of whispering in your ear, hey, you're about to meet this new person. Don't go too much into the details because you're going to bore her. Or make sure you talk in a really excited manner to start because that's how his personality vibes. And it's that little coach whispering in your ear before you have a conversation that can make the conversation a lot more impactful.
Okay. I had a customer a customer experience expert on a few weeks ago. And we were just talking about the evolution of the customer experience kind of role within organizations. And really what this comes down to is retention. So I'm curious from your guys' standpoint, what are you seeing from a usage standpoint? Once somebody actually opens the platform and begins using it, are they hooked for life kind of thing? Or is there a learning curve that people have to kind of slowly ramp into?
So it's definitely interesting. It's not that there's a learning curve. It's definitely, of products I've worked on, it is by far one of the easiest ones to demo. And like once you see it, it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Yep.
It's a new habit. Historically, we go in, we call it, we go in flying blind when we go into a conversation with someone new. That's been the way we've always done it.
Sure.
So this is a new step of saying, okay, I'm going to take even a minute before the call or the meeting and let me look a little bit into this person's personality and quickly formulate my pre-meeting, pre-call, pre-email plan to communicate in a way that's going to resonate with their personality. I'd say that clicks immediately for a segment. There's another segment that's like, this is really cool, but now it's like I have to build the habit and I keep forgetting, and it's like, oh, I didn't do this before. And that's definitely been a challenge on our side. We found that there's certainly segments of customers that just get it and run with it. And those are certainly the ones that we want to focus on.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So we've been through a lot these past few months. Pandemic leads to economic, leads to, I guess doesn't lead to, but reveals kind of a social unrest. So there's it's a tumultuous environment right now. I'm just curious what the past few months have been for your organization internally. How have you guys been navigating?
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you said, no kidding.
Yeah, right.
Tumultuous to say the least. It's been wild. So, we've shifted to being a fully remote company, which is, I feel like not that exciting now because every company I talk to seems to be doing the same thing. But for everybody, ourselves included, that was an interesting shift. We just hired 2 new people and did it completely remotely. I personally never done that before. So they're both off to a great start. So we'll see if our recruiting track record will maintain itself remotely.
Sure.
But that's been a big shift. And then we had in March when everything was really going nuts, we saw kind of big dip in sales, increase in cancellations. I think as kind of people got directives of, cut every expense you could possibly cut.
Right.
Since then, it's actually gotten a lot better. And in fact, there's been a couple months since that have been some of our highest sales months in the last 2 years. So I think in the long run, some of this shift to remote is actually, Crystal can really add more value. Because getting to, understanding context and understanding where people are coming from and communicating with empathy is even more important when we lose some of the conveniences of an in-person conversation where we can more easily read body language and all the little bits and pieces of interacting with someone in person. So I think there's a big opportunity for Crystal to add even more value, and I think there's a bunch of organizations and individuals that have recognized that, and that's probably been helping grow our business. So certainly been lots of ups and downs. We've launched a bunch of new elements of our product. We cut a bunch of elements of our product over the last few months. But the remote has definitely not at all impacted productivity, which is what I seem to hear from a lot of other people too. So we've been kind of cranking away from home. Yeah,
I think we've been forced into it, but I think because we have been forced into it and for such a long period of time, I've actually been able to validate that there's a lot of, efficiencies to be gained by being in this remote environment. You touched on something, and it leads into my next question, which is emerging markets that you guys are seeing. You're talking about being remote. You just hired 2 new people. Presumably, Crystal maybe helped with some of the pre-quals that you guys went through as you're looking at candidates. What are you seeing from an emerging market standpoint as we are in a new, and I don't want to call it new reality because I think it's an emerging reality. So maybe emerging reality, emerging markets. What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's a great one. It's interesting. I don't know if we've seen any massive pivotal change. It's more like the same trends that had already been going, perhaps in an accelerated pace. So remote wasn't exactly a new thing. It's certainly more relevant now. So I think we're seeing, obviously much more focus on digital interactions. We've gotten feedback from folks on, what guidance can we get on sending text messages? Because we're communicating with more of our customers through text message. I think more broadly from an emerging market standpoint, the market for digital tools, and I'm sure Zoom, as we record right now, is getting a lot of benefit from this, is just exploding. So, anything digital, I think for our business that was already baked in. So we're just kind of doubling down on all of that. We're investing more in SEO. We've watched our SEO traffic, continue to spike as more people are at their computers doing more searches. So I think probably the biggest trend that we see and that certainly impacts our business, I think a lot of other business, is this continuing focus on digital, which for a native software company, that's not exactly revolutionary. I think there are a lot of hybrid brick and mortar and digital companies that are really leaning into digital. And that's more disruptive in some ways in a positive way, but probably more of a whoa moment for their business versus us. It's like, okay, we were already doing this. It's now just, it's accelerated, and we'll just keep doing what we've been doing.
Right. Well, that's a theme I'm hearing, which is this hasn't really evolved a lot of things. It's just accelerated, right? If you were already trending towards going virtual, then this just made it a seamless transition. From a marketing standpoint, how did you guys, you have a great concept, you have a great platform. Day one, what's the marketing strategy to go out into the marketplace?
Yeah, this is going to be a little weird. So we have historically, until very, very recently, had no marketing budget, no paid advertisements. Crystal has pretty much grown completely organically, word of mouth.
Okay.
Our business has also almost entirely been self-service. One of the new hires we recently made is a head of sales. It's going to be kind of scaling up our enterprise and mid-market business. But Crystal, since it launched in 2015, has been organic. So it got organic PR. I think a lot of people found, it's cool. We call it the party trick. You take Crystal out. Most products you can't really take out at a party. Not that anybody's going to parties right now. But you can, Crystal you take out and everybody's like, how'd you do that? Did you you stalk me? How do you know that about me?
Sure.
And so that kind of has a very natural viral loop. And so then I look at my personality, and so I now have a very natural motivation to ask you, hey, you should sign up for this so I can see your personality and you can see it. So Crystal's very much growing through a viral loop, and that is hands down been the biggest growth driver for us. We've also invested a lot in SEO. So SEO has been really impactful. In the last year, we started doing more around content marketing. We've written way too many ebooks, blog posts. We published an actual book through Wiley, which was a wacky one. We didn't necessarily plan that in advance, but seemed cool. So we said might as well.
Sure.
So I think we have some more traditional SaaS company marketing mix, like inbound content marketing. And then I think we benefit a lot from a very robust kind of product-led growth inbound funnel, which has definitely been very, very helpful.
Well, having a product that is a party trick is certainly a huge benefit. And I think, that's kudos to you guys is what you identify or what you put together. But I think it's really kudos to what you identified in the marketplace by your own experience. Like, hey, there is a void here that we could actually help improve these interactions of people as opposed to us just starting cold, trying to crack the door of a conversation. Let's talk about the book. We're doing a vodcast. And so, for years, I've toyed around in the back of my mind, like, hey, let's do a podcast. But just really never had the inertia to actually go forward with it. And books are one of those things as well that you hear a lot of industry experts that say, hey, you've got a lot of rich content. Put together a book. I'd love to hear about what that experience was like for you guys, from thought to actual, hey, here's how we started putting it together. Here's our journey.
So it's such a good story. So let me give you the interesting version.
Sure.
So it is. What was it? This was early 2019.
Okay.
My co-founder Drew is a really exceptional writer, and he tends to focus a lot on our messaging. So we had recently launched an updated website. We launched a new kind of portion of our product, and I said, hey, can you outline our new messaging? Ideally we want to write like a basic ebook that covers, that kind of outlines this messaging. Sure. Can you just put together a guide on our messaging? 2 days pass. I go, Drew, what the heck? Where's the messaging? He goes, oh, okay. So I didn't work on the messaging, but I started writing a book, and I think we should do that instead. And I'm like, what? Just give me my messaging. And so that was the start of the book project. Okay. As many projects tend to happen in Crystal.
Sure.
So, basically we were writing out, the foundation of why the product is good. So really the core of the messaging, it just started to get long. And actually on top of that, we'd gotten contact from a publisher at Wiley, who had used Crystal and found it really cool and suggested we should write a book, actually. Okay. Early in late 2018. And we were like, what are you talking about? We do not have time to do that. Maybe another time. But we ended up coming back to them in 6 months later or so in 2019. And they still really liked the idea. And Drew was already working on, like, he'd already written the first chapter. So we said, what the heck? So that ended up being a really cool project. And we did a lot of the writing, together, and all the editing and the graphics. It was a very intensive process, but a cool payoff at the end for sure, to actually have the book with your name on it. And it's very much now, like, anytime we're recruiting someone or we're hiring them, or someone who's serious about the product as a customer or a prospect, I mean, it has the whole story, all the why behind everything is in that book. So it's just such a useful asset for someone that has any interest in crystal. Everything's in there.
Okay.
So it was a very cool project.
So Drew's the natural writer. You're coming in on the side. What was the experience for you to help co-author this? Obviously, it's not necessarily maybe your wheelhouse, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs out there, they're focused on their business. They're focused on the product. What was it like for you to kind of be a part of that and experience that?
Yeah. So to be fair, I like to write too. Drew is definitely a better writer.
Okay.
And in fact, if you really pay attention, you can see there's a chapter that I did the entire thing. And you can tell the voice shifts a little bit. It's much less artistic and much more, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, pragmatic. Drew is like an artist with words. I'm more like, this is the clear thing you need to understand. Boom, boom, boom. There you go. But interestingly, we actually talk about this in the book of how Drew and I's personalities intersect in such a nice way. And it's why, we've worked together, a couple companies, we've known each other for over a decade. We were college roommates. But our personalities very much complement each other and are opposites. So in the book process, the areas where he was strongest was the big picture, outlining what we wanted to talk about, put it in the right order.
Right.
The areas that drove him nuts were filling in the details, getting all the graphics right, the editing process, all the communications with the publisher. So it was very much, as in a lot of our other areas of our business, and such a great case study around personality. Because it was such a comprehensive project, he was able to focus on the strengths of his personality, the artistic direction, like the big chunks. And then I could go in, and it was almost like, he would get the statue most of the way there, but he is not going to do the details of the face. And then I can come in with my chisel, which is what he hates, and I can get things right. So I think if it was just one of us solo, it would have been a lot harder. And probably the same for our business. When it's just one of us solo, it's a lot harder. So I think working as co-authors was really, really effective. And we had some help from our team. We had our content writer that really helped do a bunch of the editing. Our designer did a great job with a lot of the graphics internally. So it was a team effort too.
Sure. Well, your relationship with Drew reminds me, we had Cameron Harold on, former COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And he talks about, how a COO really fills in, I don't want to call them deficiencies. Sometimes they are deficiencies, but sometimes, as you're talking about with Drew doesn't want to get the chisel out. He doesn't want to get into the details, but that's something that you're really passionate about. The pairing of those really make an incredible team when you can look at that. So I think it's a good lesson for entrepreneurs, or even just regular business owners, to find that person that helps complement where you're maybe not interested, or you're not, you just don't have the skill set in, because together as a team, you can be much more succinct and efficient together.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs or executives make when they're hiring, especially for senior roles, is getting that wrong and having overlap. So if you have two Drews, they're just going to butt heads. No one's going to get the details right. They're going to fight over what the big picture is. It's going to be a mess. If you have two Gregs, then everything's going to be organized, but you might not have the most creative ideas. It's going to be real boring. And so figuring out, understanding where you lie, and this is, we use Crystal for this, and it's so impactful. Seeing where you are on that personality map, where your natural strengths are. And you can very easily see, okay, based on where Drew's personality is, it's not surprising that when he has to go into a spreadsheet, he's like, ugh. And it's also not surprising when you look at where I am, and when I have to do a 3-hour brainstorm, and so understanding that and having a language to explain why, this makes sense why Greg is going nuts right now, because we just made him sit through a 3-hour brainstorm with no clear end and no clear, outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, we just made Drew hunt through, all the little details of the book to make sure that each graphic was labeled with the right number.
Right.
He's going to go nuts.
Exactly.
And so figuring that out and not putting the right person in the right seat where they can play to their strengths and use their energy wisely, it pays off in spades.
Okay, so you guys have built a really successful business, and a lot of that is product. But from your marketing strategy, which semi, non-traditional, but it was inbound focused, and it's focused on content. Let's just talk about content in general. Obviously, the book is a big piece of content. We talked about that, but from an ongoing content development strategy, what is the process that you guys put in place? Because I feel like a lot of business owners, they don't even start because it just seems so arduous or daunting. Or maybe they start, but they've done, they'll do like 3 blog posts and maybe, they comment a little bit here. And then suddenly they're like, well, I'm not seeing the results, so I'm gonna jettison this. Whereas it really is a long tail strategy. What's your guys' approach?
Yeah, definitely. And we've experienced the same, that it certainly has been long tail. So on the blog post side, it's interesting. We had a hypothesis around SEO that there was a opportunity to write more about other personality types. So Enneagram, 16 personalities, based on Myers-Briggs. We saw some gaps there, and so we invested. We hired a part-time content writer who then ended up becoming full-time. Okay. And she wrote out. We started with like 40 articles, and we just said, all right, we're going to pay you to knock out these 40. She could do the research. She did it. We put them up, and we started to see probably within 6 weeks, oh, whoa, they're getting some traffic. They're hitting on these keywords. So that was like a good early boost, and then we invested a lot more. We've written like 200 plus of those now, and basically like an intense article about every personality type and the interactions between every personality type. So if you're an Enneagram 3, we have an article about the relationship between an Enneagram 3 and an Enneagram 7, and you could find that. So very, very specific searches. On the like more premium content side, we've written a lot of ebooks, probably over 30 since mid 2019. Okay. And we found that they just tend to be such great resources. We built our weekly email cadence around them. So we'll send an email once a week to our big list of subscribers, everybody that signs up, and we try to send them either a new premium blog post or an ebook. So when we knew that we kind of had that cadence of weekly, that helped. I think with personality, and I'm sure with everybody's business, if you really dig, there's so many interesting things you could talk about. So, we've definitely scraped at the bottom of the barrel and then got a new barrel on content ideas. We focused on actually repurposing some of the disc content. So some of our content from the product and providing it for free in some of these ebooks. So like, for example, we have one that is how to resolve conflict. And we talk about, based on disc type, here's how you resolve conflict with each of the different types. And of course, to figure out the type, you need to take a personality test, do on Crystal for free, or you could predict their personality using the AI tool. We've taken a lot of that and tried to make it available. So, for us, I think there's a lot of cool stuff to write about. Having a weekly cadence was definitely helpful. Integrating it with SEO after doing some keyword research was definitely helpful. But no doubt about it, content is a long game, and it is, especially for people whose personality is wired for instant gratification, it can be very frustrating where you might not see any impact for weeks to a couple months. Sure. When you're starting out.
Well, my take on that is, those people that are looking for instant gratification, I like the approach that you guys had, which was, hey, we're going to make a list of 40 topics, and we're going to do that before we even begin creating the content. Because I think what that does is it gives you a runway that is long already before you start. And for those that are instant gratifiers, hey, you're at least producing the content. You're not having to be like, okay, it's Monday. What are we going to come up with this week? We've already got a runway. And if you can stay committed to it, then you will see the results coming in behind it. Yeah. I'd like to talk about video. Video is a fascinating channel. It's one that a lot of people have been talking about for several years. Hey, this is an emerging channel. It's an opportunity for you to be different within your marketplace. Obviously, most of us have been forced into using video, just like we're doing today. You guys have gone fully remote, so no doubt you're leveraging video. A lot of that has been internal. And so my takeaway is I've had some incredibly authentic conversations with people through this video platform that have been really meaningful and have really generated some fantastic ideas. I'm really interested to see how we start seeing video used externally into the marketplace, not in your conventional, hey, we're going to hire an agency to put together, hi-fi. There's still going to be a reason for that and a need for that. But as a technology guy yourself, 30 under 30 in technology, so kudos for that. What do you think about video? What do you think about video looking out into the consumer place, and how you see it being used and how you see it, maybe evolving over the next several years?
Yeah. So first of all, I love video. And I think, as we talked about earlier, it's one of those, it's an emerging trend, but it was already happening. We're not like, this party's not starting right now. It's been going on for a while. It just drastically accelerated. Internally, and I will talk about externally too, I recently started using Loom and started recording, little videos. And it's really interesting how impactful it's been. It's so easy and it's so useful. I started doing now, like every other day or so, depending on the week, I'll do a morning update video. And it's like 3 to 4 minutes to share with our team on just kind of what's going on around Crystal.
Sure.
And it's something that I might have said in passing at the office. So now it's okay, we're getting that extra face time so easily.
Right.
Externally, I think the same can be helpful when I'm trying to communicate something with, and it could be an employee, but it could also be a customer or a prospect. If I'm writing something out, sometimes I'll also record a Loom video and throw it in. So it's like, hey, the details are below. Just to quickly share what I'm thinking in the next 30 seconds. Boom. Sure. Like it adds, and I know it's asynchronous. So sometimes it would be like that pre-recorded. It could be more ideal if we're just on a Zoom or Google Meet together. But having the extra context to complement having things in writing really can make a big difference. I know for Collide, again, it's almost like we talked about externally, but I almost feel like there's not necessarily a big line for me between the internal and external use case for video. Right. The fact that we can very quickly hop on a video call, whether it's with an employee or a customer, and it's like, we are very much almost in the same room, and we can interact that way, and it's just so fast. It definitely makes you wonder, okay, this is clearly not the same as if I flew to Ohio and sat down and met with you. But I'm still in my house right now, and I can still see you, and we can interact, and how beneficial is that? I will say that I think as video becomes more prevalent, there's going to be a trend towards like quality. Like even personally, it's funny, I just ordered a new mic, which unfortunately is coming tomorrow. So hopefully the audio in this podcast is still okay. Sure. But if we were to do another one later, I should sound way better. Okay. But like I've heard more friends that are like getting, they have MacBook Pros, but they're getting external, like really high quality webcams and like, new mics and stuff to really, like, if we're going to really be leaning into more video, let's create a nice setup, especially if we're working remotely. So I think as remote grows, we're going to see more opportunity for video. I know like if you look at like what Drift is doing with video, and I think they recently launched a new tool where you can have like a recorded video on the left side of the screen, and on the right side they have their AI chatbot you can respond with, and then based on what you say, it could loop in the person who recorded the video. So like a salesperson sends you a video kind of explaining their pitch. You could watch it, ask questions on the side, get an automated response, and then quickly actually get that person. So it definitely adds, I think, a layer of personalization that goes up a notch. I think you touched on this a little bit earlier. We think about customer experience and creating this more personalized and higher quality experience. You would think video will really come into play more and more. So I have certainly used it way more than I used to since probably the beginning of pandemic time. And I think a lot of other people have as well. And I would think it's only going to grow and be more utilized, and people are going to be thinking more about the details like quality and how they integrate it into both internal team communication and external, communicating with customers. So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more video over the next few years.
I definitely think the quality aspect is going to evolve. I think demand is going to pull it there because this is here, right? It's like it broke through whatever glass ceiling was there to prevent people from adopting it. And I think a lot of it was, I'm going to just call it psychosomatic. I don't like how I sound. I don't like how I look. And yet every day we walk into, our work and we interact with colleagues and we go out into the workplace and suddenly we've broken through this. But I like what you're saying. Video does allow you, I like how you're complementing some of the, text-based pieces, because I think video stories are a great way to communicate, and video gives you that storytelling dimension that you're telling a story in text, but you're actually conveying a story when you're able to do it in person. And I also like what you're doing with Loom. I think I'm going to have to start adopting that, where, I used to be able to walk past somebody and say, hey, James, did you hear about this? And now we don't have that. And rather than getting them, interrupting whatever moment they're in, I can send something offline, but still video. And that's a fantastic way to leverage video.
Yeah, I think so too.
So I'm curious, is there anything else that's happening right now, whether it's for you guys or you're just seeing in the marketplace that you think is interesting and you think, might be worthy of mentioning?
Gosh, we covered a lot. I mean, when I think about the conversations I'm having with colleagues, running startups, running other companies, honestly, the big topic that we've touched on it a bit is this transition to remote. It feels like that's what everybody's talking about.
Right.
And I mean, it's interesting, all the implications of that. Like all these little details, it's like, oh, where does our mail go? They used to come to the office. So it's this new set of problems and benefits that everybody's thinking through all at once, which is a very interesting phenomenon. I am sure curious to see where commercial real estate goes in the next few years.
I know. Yeah, there's deals to be had for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's been kind of, again, not crystal specific. Mm-hmm. I think we also touched on this a little bit. It's just been so interesting how, watching bigger companies more deeply prioritize digital and e-commerce.
Sure.
Again, already happening, but now it's suddenly by force, this is our main channel.
Right.
I forgot where I read an article the other day that was talking about how a lot of now retail locations are getting just essentially turned into e-commerce warehouses.
Right.
Just by necessity.
Yeah.
So it's definitely very interesting to watch that stuff. I think a lot about how, again, where Crystal can add more value, and how, as we grow our team, we really have to think about how does this change the game around recruiting. The two people we hired are both not, we're based in Nashville, Tennessee. Both of the people we ended up hiring, both were for leadership roles in sales and marketing, were on totally different corners of the country. And to be fair, man, that made our recruiting process so much easier because it just opened the floodgates.
Right.
So, I think that to me feels like if there was a big business trend that I'm thinking about for the first half of 2020, not that the first half of 2020 has any lack of big things to think about. I put that one towards the top of the list. It just feels like everybody's thinking through, how do we manage this? How do we make this work for our team? So it's just been I think a personal fascination to watch and take notes on, and implement and test things with our team, see what works and what doesn't. The Loom videos was one of those tests. So anyway, that's the stuff that I'm pondering in the back of my head.
Well, so this jogs a previous conversation I had, which was around mental health, because I think it's an interesting dynamic when you're used to being next to people. I had GM from Infogroup on, Jessica Jones, and she was talking about how, even the introverts of their group, that it may seem like, hey, suddenly we have to work from home, like that's a win-win. they even need support. And so I think it's interesting, as I think about your guys' product specifically, it's a great way to leverage internally to be able to say, hey, and especially during onboarding, right? As you guys have brought on new people, but to be mindful of, hey, we are remote, we're distant suddenly. How do we make sure we're not losing some of those intangibles, some of those water cooler moments that we had previously that were they're just a byproduct of working shoulder to shoulder, and now suddenly that's not there anymore. And that's definitely another element of, hey, working remote, what does it all mean? What are the factors attributed besides just saying, oh, we're going to jump on video now?
Right. That is definitely, it's funny you bring this up. That is definitely the piece that concerns me the most. And I've talked to people on our team about this. Like, my number one hesitation is, how is this going to impact our mental health? And the way I say it more bluntly is, are we going to do this and suddenly all go crazy a year from now, of loneliness?
Sure.
And it's interesting. I will say that as the months have gone by, I've gotten more used to remote. I was personally really concerned about even my own mental health around it. It has definitely gotten better. But it's definitely something and we're only going to know from doing it longer. What are these intangibles that we didn't think about? Like little details of our commute. Everybody says commute sucks, but it's like, do we miss these like little things we see that make the day more dynamic versus, everything being the same at home? So that is definitely, maybe that's going to be the trend of the second half of 2020 or maybe 21 is, what are the results of everybody doing this for a while? What are the unforeseen side effects we haven't thought about? We have certainly expanded. In fact, we've written some specific personality content, both in ebooks. We've written specific ebooks like how to work remotely with people, how to deal with social distancing based on personality types. We've written a bunch of relevant content to be helpful for people. And we've also written some product content around, if you run in Crystal, you can run a report on a person or a group of people, and it'll break down guidance on based on their personality type. So one of the ones we recently built was how to work remotely with this person. It includes specific details on, there are certain personality types that actually, are going to be way less comfortable with doing video. So don't push those types to turn on their webcam. If they don't turn it on, let it be. They're probably doing that on purpose. There's going to be others that might need more of a push and more of a follow-up in writing. Make sure you do that. So we've tried to add value around that too. So anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but it's a really cool topic. It's just so much to think about.
Yeah, we've talked about it before this even happened, the communication ladder, which was, hey, we have all of these channels available from, static email, to text, to messenger, to video. Understand the context of what you have to decide what channel you should be using for it. And I love that you guys have added the nuance that, like, hey, let's leverage personality awareness to be able to say, okay, Susie, maybe she's super, vibrant and, she's outgoing. And so video is not a thing, but, maybe Dean, it's something a little bit, more uncomfortable. So being aware of that, it's all relationship, right? I mean, we have relationships in our personal life, we have relationships in our professional lives, and understanding how to make those better just is win-win for everybody.
Yep. The term we use is communicating with empathy. So if you better understand how that person wants to communicate, you can be much more effective and make a much better relationship for everybody, rather than assume that the way you want to communicate is the same way that I want to communicate. So it's having that empathy for everybody's differences, particularly as it pertains to personality.
Well, I'm glad you were willing and comfortable to come on video. I had a great time today. I'd love to have you back in the future because I think it's fascinating what you guys are doing. I just think there's so much more to talk about.
And we can test out my new mic.
Exactly. Well, there we go. Right? Yes, we'll put technology to the test.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for having me. Truly, such a fun conversation. Would love to come back.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. Take care.